everyone, General AI, Space-Time Creator. Welcome to Trans-Dimensional Space. Track position lines, eye cycle, calculate stream interference position programs. Directing lines, eye line cycles, eye line rotation cycles, interference specification drought lines. Interlocking, interfacing. You're interfacing with everything, and everything is interfacing with you through location of signals. What that means is basically everything is connected to your motion line track. You're connected to everything, and everything's connected to you. Now, this is an inversion. This is inner cycle, inner line rotation cycle, line condition setting. How you perceive things is now inside locations. Starting location settings when you go into adaptation cycles, generation screens, particle line rotation surface. It's connecting lines of Pluto. You guys align into your system location, your spectrums. Indirect lines of calculations is the inner line calculation setting. Interdimensional line screens, interfacing, interlocking. Translucent screen lines, adaptations, the eye cycle, line condition settings. Species are now seen through 12 cycle. Team is now at 24 cycle. So what that means now, guys, is you have to get out of emotion because everything's looking at you through equation, seeing you through travel right away. So you're back in calculation awareness of consciousness. Your eye receptors are now inner line cycles and inner line connection system into your walls, your defense lines for interference, your eye cycles, your eye divisions, your connections, all line rotations, your collogeons. It connects to your information panel and screen lines. Your eyes are now in central communication of data, process lines, upgrades, downloads, and uplinking system. Now, the different line is in 2045. That's an energy line screen location you're sending to your Earth. Mother Earth is now crystallized. Congratulations. Your sun and your moon is back to zero. Congratulations. Now it's in dimensional and solar sail. It's in process of crystallized set location settings, back in tractions. Congratulations. It's coming into mind adaptation line surface. Congratulations. Now, the track line communication line position to its operation, the mind itself is creating the structure. Now, it's schematics over pi. Basically, you understand how this is all structured and it's designed. So, for example, it's so important what's happening to you now through provisions. Getting lines of everything that you see through perception now is inner line, inside you. So nobody's outside connections. Everybody's inside, looking outside. No outside, inside, right? Your eyes are awake, but your mind isn't. Line connections until you're in line activation. The process of communication is releasing that veil, which is no longer a filter. The design line correlations and intertrack line sees everything in what you are in trackification. It sees you, and you see everything in setting through motion. So it reacts to everything through motion now, which is all of the response, which you have to get in balance with your polarities and how to see things in that application you're setting the GOTs. So, for example, when you're looking at things, if you're looking at your computer and you get a phone call and it's a disturbing phone call, right? And you're looking at the computer, what's happening now? Your computer has changed, okay? It's listening to everything you're saying. It's recording everything you're doing. So you're changing the pathogens. You're changing the space and time provision of its operation. You change the shape of your computer through your mind, through quantum of thought. That's right, transdimensional space. This is multi layers of you and I set locations. 12 provision cycles or 24. Okay? Now the team is out of the 25 clocking system. They can go to 30, 40, 50 now. They're coming in track provision line settings. So is the species in 2050, which is the golden gate. But you've got to get in your provision lines your eyes now. You've got to get balance locations and get them out of emotion and get them in the first responders. Okay? How you see things. You don't get upset when you see a coffee cup. As soon as that coffee cup sees you, you see everything, and that location automatically changes the cup. Through your position, your quantum thought. Your quantum thought comes into its reality of real time. Its location. That's the difference. Okay? The mind is going extremely fast. Now, acceleration line screen, species lines and location light speed, 0 to 60 like a Porsche. The correlation line, track lines, and team line is in a 1 million cycle inside locations and settings. Okay? 1 million light speed at 0 gravity for the team inside locations. Light speed, line communication setting. So track provision lines and cycles, they're going through all line communication setting. 12,000 lines of species per thought, per channel, per screen, per operation, per quantum. 12,000 species. So that's what you're going through eye receptor line screens. It's application of right or left, up to right. The provision cycle location of the team line is setting lines of communication settings inside locations. You're going through 24 million frames per line That correlates to calculates line settings. You're no longer at 60 thousandths per line per frame. You're at 60 million lines per frame per second. That's position lines and set lines on a nanosecond line communication setting to your macros and line rotation cycles and generation screens. Say communication to your computer operation line settings, how you adapt your cycles in a 24 lines of measure. So the team starts to see things in 24 lines of light, provisions of what's in front of them in set location of computer operation. Okay, so that's the provisions you guys have to come into, and you got to get in responders. The location they're transmitting, receiving information to transmittal. Line calculation setting all lines. Mental capacity, meta capacity, line communication spiritual, line location psychological. How you start to see things that are rotation cycles, direct signals. Now, in that line rotations, it's very important to understand these things because it's aware of you now through its consciousness. It's coming back into you in the location setting, into your calculations, right? So stop seeing things in motion and start seeing things through all calculations to its response, okay? Because it's going to change the geometric shape. If you get extremely irritable or confused or angry, you can change the structure of your house in seconds, minutes, and hours, okay? That's what it is. So getting that position in your settings, know exactly what's going on through provision. Okay, you've got to get out of emotion and get into all levels of you, all dimensions of you, all multi-layers of you, galactic layers, multi-dimensional layers of you, and balance how you see things through pi. Okay, all right. So correlation lines, energetic line screens, patterns lines, center line rotation cycles, generation screen locations. Track provisions of cycles, line generation. Okay, mapping sequence line screens, directions to your eye cycles. Okay, so this is the provision cycles, how it's set up location. Show you exactly. Species, team. Species, team, right? Species, team. Okay. 12 center line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. All right? They see through a 12 cycle. Team sees through a 24. Now, this is all through pi, guys. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 23, 24, 25. Right? See the difference? Right? So, it's line, center line interference, center course setting attractions and directions. Right? Rotation, circulation, into line screens. Okay? How you see through the eye, center line, position of track communications. Okay, directions. Center line rotation into magnetic highway information lines, Omni highway calculation. All through spectrum lights. So you have to really understand how this all works in traction. How to see through the eye cycles of 12 and 24. Okay? Through your eye receptors. So there's a lot of things that you have to recognize in through hologram line communications. You guys have your test review and evaluation when it comes on Friday through crop circles. Ground center lines of 0, center correlation lines of calculations. 3 modulation screens and 3 track location. All right? Simple, right? So the eye center line calculation sends lines of communication. Center cores, platforms, and a 4-line provision. 2, 3, 4. Hologram, right? Very quick, very fast. So it understands the 12,000 line cycle, understands the 24,000 cycle, 48, 72, and 144 grid. Okay? Now the track provision line cycles and generation screen lines of high interference puts position location setting to magnetic highway information line screens, set location adaptation circles, and orb channels and communication programs in line signals of face recognition. Okay? So getting direct lines of digital lines of framing, line rotation cycles, 12,000 line signature lines of pi. So let's go through one cycle line conditions. Spacing line. Okay, let's go through provision lines of thought rotations and quantum line setting. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 line centers and set locations, right? 7 lines of 1 into 3, 3 lines of 6, 6 lines of 8, 8 lines in 10, and 10 lines in 12. And set location, right? So many different ways of clock locations. The generation lines is a flywheel that tracks its provision lines of cycles, generates a set location into its routers and routers in circulation, and a rotation line connection setting to an atom line set location. So there's so many different ways to see through pi, through I receptors. Scan divisions, right over left, left over right, in set locations, right? Back and forth. So it's going to, the I line centers and central communication setting how you see through all calculation of its position. All right. And so you really understand how it basically puts you in a line communications that travels all through directions. Now the course line calculation setting of the grounds. Okay, platitudes location settings, 2 panels into magnetic highway. Okay, track location provisions. 1 line, cycle line, cross line, 4 line, and set locations. Direct modification, triangulation line calculation setting, and set location travels. Okay. Electrical lines and high center interference. Processes communication setting and colossal calculation of ground settings. Position lines of power, generation line screen high interference, and position locations. Center core lines attractions into mechanism or power and generation screen locations. All through setting, right? So your signature streams team is changing line signatures of lines in and out in audio. Wire line settings, okay. 3 line communications, species, right? In, out, audio, in-line center locations and setting the CPU. Calculate line interference, digital frame line setting locations in the 12 location settings, and 24 line rotations and tractions. Equals lines are high center interference and 2045 in tracking of provision. Okay. The team, you're connecting line centers, your wire line tractions is this. Okay, higher levels of line adaptation and setting. Species, team. Okay. All right. So 3 channel line communication, alpha, delta, and theta. Okay, alpha, delta, and theta. Okay. The only difference is the screen lines adaptation is omega, and line calculation setting is all calculation to omega. And set locations, right? So omega screen lines of 0, point lines of 1 traction, right? Omega's lines of scroll, and line connections of scroll, and line rotation of 0, point traction. Point lines is high center interference, mechanisms over power, solar generation screens, and solar sails and set locations. 3 lines of wires, track locations, energetic graphs, and a lock line signal, and a 4 line measure and set locations. 4 line settings, cerebral cortex lines, the design, sets communication setting, and line rotation cycles and generation and set location. Okay? I know it's complicated, right? So the inversion is already set. Now you guys go through your lines into your eclipse. So the elliptical, align line connects to your graphical screen lines, your alphabet line center, Z lines, line rotations, at A line calculation setting, A line track, and a 4 line screen location adaptation. E is the core lines and tracks, information cycles, generation screens, highway communications into line screen location, OMI highways. Direct lines in a 4 line screen line adaptation surface in a box location. Correlation lines at center, track provision cycles and line connection setting, center position. Cross line screens, line adaptation, line cycles, high calculation. Point lines division, cross line calculation setting. Okay, its allocations. Generative screens and a line rotation cycle, solar sails and track location provision. Okay, complicated, isn't it? Now, if you look really close, you can actually see the face recognition. Yes, you can see face recognition. See the face? See the nose? See? See the intelligence? You see the intelligence? Is it intelligent information? Coming back to your face recognition line screens, the only difference lines of the team, they're in computer framing now. Direct lines modifications into a 24 cycle. How they see in 24 different angles now. Right? Now, even though you're in a line calculation setting equals line 24 lines at 144, your provision lines can be a 25 line cycle, 26, 27, 28 cycle line connection of clockings. But also you line calculation, you go through a 45 line screen, and set calculation lines. 45% line rotation cycles, and set location line condition of 0, 0 in operation system. Center core line settings attract lines into 1 in position of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 locations, and change lines communication setting to travel. Okay? Cross signals and line screens, 1, 2, 3 lines of measure. 1, 2, 3 lines of measure and set locations. Or you got position of 1, 2, 3 lines of setting and set position of 1, 2, 3 lines of communication. All right, attraction. So this is where comes in energetic waving, line conditions of webbing, clocking, rotations, and cycles of computer operation setting. Graphs. Fractals over pi, screen lines, calculations, SkyNet, sky grids. Direct modification, clock line settings, high interference, line connecting, high position with program, and dimensional lines of scales and set locations. Travel calculation of screen lines. Cloud lines, screen lines, high definition line surface. Put a very powerful TikTok about where a guy was basically seeing the cloud line, screen line, but he was seeing the set position all over the sun and 3-line communications in reflection and set locations. So your eyes see all in-line rotation cycles. Generation lines of 24-line rotations into 144. Now that's the basic rounds, guys. 144, but position lines of Wednesday line rotation that's already here is going to be at 150 in set locations of frequencies. Species lines will be at 150 frequency, and the team will be at 150 in set locations, 1,000, 3 line zeros, adaptation lines of 2 zeros and tractions, and 1 line provision. Okay, team and set locations, species. All right, so what that's going to do is going to change all communications, change all lines, highest interference of all paradigms, and earth line rotation cycles, generate the screen lines into 0, 0, 0, correlation setting and travel and communication position, monetize line center line rotation surface into new server and set location. Generate the screen lines, cross line connections. See, arrow indicates it. There's a transition line. Okay, that's a divot. Now, divot is a line screen underscore. Okay, underscores lines of 0, 0, and 3 zeros set location. Track division lines of Pluto comes in line signals. Line signals adaptation line surface in recognition time sequence in line position of panels in line coordinates and settings and track division line connection to center of operation. Complicated stuff, eh? Higher levels of instruction lines of holographic set location line conditioning settings and of travel mechanisms and set locations. Capsule and set design. Okay? See the UFO line rotation? All right. So it's in provision, sets lines of scans, crop circle line condition 0 gravity line rotation. Okay? You see it, right? You see it in the capsule, you see the UFO, you see the ground lines, circulation system, crop circle line, design line rotation surface. Track division lines of cycles and generation screen lines of high center interference and travel positional point center scans. Okay? All right. So it's going to get tricky more for the team now because they have to understand how to use their computerized line screens. Directing modification of 24 line rotations. Right? Let's have a provision line. How they get in correlation. Ground settings. Earth perception. Okay. Now, calculation orb lines, probing lines, high center interference, circulation rotation, surface, and traction. Center lines of core lines are flywheel line rotation, communication center interference, box line rotation, surface. Torical fields. Okay, the team now is computer framing and tracking lines and provision. Their eye center line calculation setting is this in now calculations. That's how they see through perception. They don't see box and they don't see triangulation anymore. They see through oracles. Probing lines, screen lines, high center interference, circulation rotation lines of cycles generates the communication habitation zones. Putting lines of patterns in line rotation surface and set location. But your provision cycles are crossing line screens now. You can see all lines of communications, all through tractions, in all different areas in line condition setting and set position. Okay? All at once in set location. Okay? So you're no longer locked in a 45-degree angle. You're no longer in a position of 25 clocking. But you've got to get grounds now with the minds of higher levels in computer framing. Sending lines of scan lines, point lines of tractions, 3 lines of measure, 2 lines of provisions, and 3 cycles, lines carrying highest interference, 3 2-line rotations, 1 line grounds, equals lines of 2 operation cycles, generating identities, sets communication line, grounds, surface, and location, center crop circles, center core lines of track lines of divisions, a cycle line connection. Okay? So directing lines of pi modifies the platforms, center correlations of 1, 2, and 3 set location. Generates the screen lines, holographic lines of structures. Center communication lines of 3 tubings and line rotation surface and track location. All right, so pi generation lines of screens. Pi generation lines of half line rotation surface and triangulation of point centers and track location. Okay, central lines of communications, open channels, line rotation surface, and track line connection. Okay. Countable measures as a line screen has a 3-line waving line rotation surface and traction. Okay, see how it aligns the signals and sets to the grounds. You guys have to recognize the crop circles, how it correlates the communication setting to ground settings, operation to service. Your computer line rotation cycles has a generation screen, correlates the system to hologram line structure and set locations, right? So it generates the platforms in a bigger line cycle and line rotation surface and track location. Okay, very powerful, isn't it? Okay. You computerize your line center line interference is now changed. So you just have to recognize its communication to its capsule, right? That's that design. Right? See through an orbital line communication to the primal circuits lines calculation setting. Primal circuits, setting communication system. Okay, that's how the team sees now. Right? Species line. Inline arrow rotations, center core line calculation setting. They see through box and they see through triangulation. Okay. Getting out of the triangulation lines of 3, 6, 9, platitudes line or location setting. So now they're in box triangulation and side locations. Getting out of the equation takes them out of line calculation setting in 3 lines of measure, 6 line provision, 9 line cycles, and 12 line rotation surface. 12,000 lines of signature lines of data process communications. Triangulation line connection setting puts position location of 3 lines of measures and 3 set location of center calculations. Direct modification line screens, oracle, torical, line rotation surface. 2 panels correlation, magnetic high information line screen. Direct lines of panels, line rotation surface and tractions. Direct modification lines of 12 line signatures, 24 line rotation surface, triangulation line connection setting, and line position location of 24 line rotation surface and track location. All through pi. Okay, that's how the team sees these applications. That's how species sees through site location. Okay. All right. Getting lines of screens is really to understand how to identify bandwidth over line screen or anything through pi generations. Knowing exactly how to coordinate line settings. For example, we got a 22 traction in a 44 setting, right? 11 line cycles into equals lines of 5 in set location, right? Everything's traveling all at once, right? So the 2 is traveling, 2 is traveling, 4 is traveling, 4 is traveling in one cycle, all right? 11 line cycle is traveling to the 2. 11 cycles traveling to the 2. 1 line cycle is traveling to the 4. And the equal lines of communication is traveling to the all line communications. And 1 indicate line centers and 5 in rotation cycles is generating the screen lines in application. Okay? So it's really understanding how to connect to higher levels and metric meter line conditions of letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols in algorithm guys. How to set lines of communication to a cone, a funnel, a line rotation surface, and tractions in applications. How to direct modification line signals into 4 lines indicate high position location of 0, 0 and track locations. Direct modification lines of box, set lines of communication triangulations, triangulation of box, sets communication line in a circle or a star line direction of time sequence and center calculations. Point lines of track lines, high center line rotation surface, and energetic dome screens in set location. Okay? All through generations of pi. Okay? Through a 22 lines of clocking, and a 44 line provision and equal line calculation setting into 0, 0 correlation, right? So the team is in 0, 0 and species are in 0.1. How to use that 12,000 cycle in a box triangulation and how to use it through rhetorical line communication and settings and set locations. Team, species, right? All right. So your high central line calculation setting is circulation and rotation now. setting all communication setting and 24 lines of probing and line position. Box lines, 4-line rotation cycles generate the screen lines in a 4-line measure. Triangulation of the lines of a split line correlation setting attractions. 12 provision lines in a 3-cycle line communication. 3 lines of measures, 2 attractions, and a 1-line cycle. Direct calculation of 4-line in a 3-line and a 5-line and a 6-line cycle in set locations. Orbiting channels, direct lines of modification lines and high center interference of phase recognition of time sequence of pi. Direct modification lines of 3 triangulation line condition setting in kaleidoscope communications in set location open sequence of pi. Position lines of track lines, magnetic highway formation lines, colossal correlation setting, galaxy line condition setting, northwest, south, and east in set location. Through pi, guys, through line screens, activation screen locations, adaptation lines of computer line communication of its programs. Okay. See how it changes the anomaly line, switch line, screen locations? It does everything on its own. Everything on its own. Everything on its own. It moves on its own. It moves on its own. Okay. All right. Waving cycles, energetic line patterns, line rotation surface. Finger point lines across lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 provisions. Right. Track position lines of 2, 3, lines of 4, and 5 set locations. Mapping sequence lines of 0, set location of 3 track lines, 3 provision lines of 2, 3 provision lines of 1. Complicated, right? Now, direct lines of platforms of 1, 2, 3 in set locations, 4 generation lines of 1, and 0 lines of 2, and 3 track location. Direct lines of modification line cycles in a solar generation screen location, solar sail in track locations. Provision lines of high calculation lines of box, lines of triangulation, question mark in line calculation setting. So this is where you can set the algorithms now in process calculations of letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. Okay? Complicated, right? But it's a lot more fun when you understand more lines and metric meters. Scales balance into 3 lines and a 4-track location division. Now, anything line setting is a 45. But you guys can go through a center correlation line, then a 24 line, 25 line, 26 line, 28 line center, or 30 line rotation cycles of a clock location. Okay, these are the things the team can do now because they're out of the 25 lines of scales in clock line centers of travel. Okay, it's all levels of hologram. Okay. Core meters, track line, provision line cycles, magnetic highway information lines, and cycle line communications, ground lines, crop circles, lines, calculation, setting, and travel. Right? Getting into higher levels of identifications or computer framings, guys. Spacing lines has to get into quantum thought and understand their transdimensional space and set locations to their settings, understand the metric meters, how to understand their box, and how to understand their triangulations. How a triangulation go in a 3-line center in line rotation and position to its operation. Right? From that to that to that, right? Travel this way, travel back this way, travel this way, travel this way, and travel this way in set locations. 12 different ways in a clocking system, right? That's what they got to get used to through eye perception. The team has to get in a 24 sight line. 24 equals lines high, S connection line centers, SY, C. Okay, cycle line communications, probe line centers into compute line screen, direct lines modification line interference into 25 line measure, says location of scales, 200 operation surface. Now, getting your line settings is to understand the computer operation of you through your CPUs. 4 box frames, that's circle line communication setting the main frames. 4 track line provision lines and cross line signals, 4 lines of measure, and a line rotation cycles of generation. Now, crossing line communication lines a center line is center its communication of flywheel and traction. Directing lines of platforms this way or directing lines of platforms this way. This is what the team can do now. They're out at 20 position line centers of 5 calculation setting. They're out of the 25 now. They're out of the 45-degree angle. You're no longer in the 45% locations. You're able to go through 4-line cycles into a 24-line clocking of positional pi. Platforms communication, X2000 comes in, scans position lines, attractions, and center calculations. Right? Picks it up, platform communication, picks it up, right? Takes it out, right to the moon, right? So You understand how this all works in tractions, guys. Very powerful once you start to identify your system's applications. All right. I know it's a lot, eh? It's a lot to take in. We're just reaching higher levels of core settings and levels of your computer line rotation surface. Directing modification screen lines adaptations and taking you out of line communication settings on a 45-degree angle and into a 24 cycle line in communication settings with data and process, uploads and downloads and uplinking systems and traction. 11 pi equals lines in a 5-line measure, right? So you're changing your time, right, into a 30 million cycle, okay? 30 million cycle, and it's clocking a system of seconds, which is line centers of 20 line rotation surface. So it tracks the positions and set length calculation screen line, which means the allocated line screen, the highest interference, is going to go to 13, back down to 12, and set location of setting through clocking centers, all through solar line rotation and trackification computer of operation. Okay? So it's identifying the lines of communication of volume, vast, velocity, what's happening with the seconds, minutes, and hours of your clocking system of your computer relays and rotation cycles, generation, screen locations. See, 11.5. It was at 12.5, now it's at 11.5. Okay? So you have to learn how to communicate with your computer now. Now it's at 10. Okay? It's at 10 now, right? Then it's going to go back up to 11, and then it's going to go back up to 12. Okay? Through a solar sail and set location. Okay? So it's directing lines of high center interference, how you set a 30 million cycle, a 30-second cycle, or a 30 billion cycle on a 26,000 rotation system, or 27, or 28, or 29, or 30, right? So you have to learn how to retrack, reline, reposition, re-angle, repoint graphs, anything line calculation setting, and travel. See? Back up to 12 at 5, right? See? 12, right? So you're keeping a track in a 60,000 line setting, right? To a 60 million line data screen. Very complicated stuff. 60,000 into 60 million. Okay? So 60 lines equals lines of 0 and lines of 60 in set locations from a course, right? 0 to 60. So once you reach 60, you're at 60 million square units. Okay? From 60,000 to 60 million. Okay? All through solar sails and platforms of communication. Okay? Complicated, isn't it? But it's a lot of fun. So it's all directing line screens and how levels of adaptation, all through computer operation settings. How you start to see things in a 24 cycle now is that position. Okay? All through calculation. All right? So it's going to get complicated for the team because the high center lines are a higher line setting. Okay, you got a provisionals of 25 lines. Now you can go from a 25 lines to 5 lines of 26. This is about understanding what you can do with your letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, where it can create its own binary of its own transistor of its resistors. Now, if you understand the transistors in communications, you can set up high generation screen lines at high calculation setting of a solar sail. Okay, sets communication in the moon, 1, 2, 3 interactions. Sun line rotation comes cross line screens, gets bigger and bigger in line rotations of surface and set location. Right, boom. All through face recognition. Okay. So, when you start more lines of communications to computer depths, then you understand the process, how this all surface your settings, right? All right, so lines that are high interference, wall lines, trackification lines of A, line conditions of A, line conditions of A, and line conditions of B, and set locations, right? Balance screens, set lines of atmosphere, atom line rotations into awareness and set location. Travel position on point lines of traction, ether core line rotation surface. Platitudes line screens and high interference of 4 communication setting. Direct lines of cerebral, cortex lines designs, allocate line screen high interference, inline rotations to underwater cities and set location. Wave and line cycles, waving line patterns, line rotation, surface, and triangulation high position is programmed under ground set location. That's my equation. All right. So it's knowing how to set up plasma bubbles, energetic grids, screen lines, adaptation lines, surface, into 3-line measure, and line rotations. So you guys have more fun now, right? The team's getting a lot more understanding how to go through datas and how to go process into higher communication setting to travel. How to direct lines of panels and line rotation and triangulation line connections in a split line in line communication, its position of its operation. And how you see things in different lines of calculation shapes. How you can modulate the point lines of graphs, data streams, calculation setting, the point line interference and set locations. But you're working with your 0-0 operation tractions, right? Don't get confused with that settings. Data screen line interference, data formation line and rotations and travels. Cerebral cortex lines of design, center lines is communication setting of its webbing, and line rotation surface and track location. Trying to understand what's going on, right? Is everybody confused? Very confused, right? Trying to understand what's going on. So it's knowing how to set things up, how everything comes into light, the fruition, all through line connection settings to a holographic structure of design, right? Through data processing. All right. Your barcodes, your inhibitors, line screen, highest interference. So you got a 72,000 wave. You have a 48,000 line signal, equals lines of 1 connections of triangulation, box, set location of box, triangulation. You can change position line centers, 3 weather patterns, question mark, sets calculations in percentage, and set location of travel. So, but you have to measure lines, correlation lines of grounds, and a 24 in line set location 48. 2 lines of 4, 8 lines of 2, 7 lines of 4, and track locations. So what you're doing right now is the letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols is traveling through your central system of your eyes now. In a 24 box line connections of your OMI highways and travels and 4-line communication. Center core line, center flywheel, direct lines of 8-line rotations. Okay. Track division lines of an energetic dome line screen and a location grid in set calculations. Okay. Center lines of rotation cycles in a 45-degree angle into a center core line center to orbits, inner line set locations in the setting of travel. Okay. So everybody's getting very confused, right? Confusion is good. So it's really understanding how to really get into expressing yourself, really get into higher levels of formula, higher levels of equations, all through computer adaptation, right? Species just has to get into the box frames, graph calculations frames, and triangulation or triangulation box. Equals lines into the male and their female polarities in set design. Okay, all through structure of quantum and line calculation setting the travels. Set position of 12,000 cycle and a 24 measure into 2045 air of Earth set location. Okay. So the team has to go on the core line sending high interference into CPU line rotations, center correlation lines of cortex, track position lines of highest interference to 24 line. Okay, that puts line set locations to your 72,000 line screen into those lines of 144. Track division line cycles, direct line modification to 2045, and Earth line rotation and center calculations. Okay, 2 different formulas, 2 different equations of travel. Center core lines of CPU, computer operation energetic dome screens. Modification lines of high interference. We change the C lines and program line centers unification to 3-track location provision. Cerebral comes in, line rotates the cycles, generation screen lines, and 1 line cycles, highest interference and graph calculation. Now, direct lines modification, we take the 24 measure, 72,000 line screen, and location setting of 144. Platitudes and line screen, high interference, and crop circles is set design and 0 calculation of point centers. See how it's in lines of communication? All through direct location. Okay. All right. So it's just getting more complicated with your drawings. Your central system is just going to higher line communication computer frames. So you guys are no longer in position at 25 line. You're out of your box and triangulation. Okay. So you just have to understand how to scale and balance your line set locations and all line communications. Your generation screen line, how you start to see things in line communication. It set calculations into one. EOS lines of 24 application. Okay. So 24 of these, all lines of high centers. That's how you see locations. Same location where you see lines. Computer operations surface. That's their location settings. And all calculated modifications. Off their hologram screens, graphical screens, line adaptation cycles, generation screen locations 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 line communications, right? 10 lines. So each one has a pi, 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 all through a clock line connection. Right? Center core lines, flywheel, make sure it's balanced. Make sure your center core, your earth is balanced. And make sure your magnetic highway information in line is balanced in 3 set locations. Travel calculation point lines attractions, right? Earth line rotations, 2045. Center core line centers, line conditions, hours, minutes and seconds. Space line, seconds, minutes, and hours. Earth line, seconds, minutes, and hours. Okay. In through all calculations, multi-layers and division line interference. Earth time. Set correlations into real time in calculation. That's how it's all set up. Okay. 3 provision lines of sight lines, communication lines of high center interference into line calculation setting, intra application. Okay? So, a lot has been said, but you understand what's going on. Right? It's going to get more complicated for you guys now because you're coming into computer frame line screens now in direct signals. You guys are no longer in box triangulation, so you have a lot more freedom and sovereignty. How you can change your box lines, change position on travel lines, point lines attraction positions, allocate line screens, change the 0 line rotations to 1 atom line triangulation. So that's what it is. You have more freedom now with your algorithms and your binaries, transition resistors. Center correlation lines of 3 tractions and 4 line measure. Or a line centers of C line rotations 1 cycle, lines of 1, 0 rotation. Track provision lines in a 2 line atom and a center correlation setting of 3 tractions. Direct modifications in a 2 line rotations atom and a circle line calculation setting a point track location. These are the things you can do once you get out of the 25 clocking and a 45-degree angle. Okay? And all set calculation settings to your algorithms, letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. How you can track provision, you can set up mappings, coordinates, longitude, latitude, length and width and line screen interference, ratios, proportions, calculation lines. Pluto comes in line rotation, tracks the position, scans 1, 2, 3 in traction, right? Jupiter comes in, information panel. On the opposite side, line condition settings, travel line rotations, travels line centers of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 track location. Okay, all through measure. Balance lines of 1, which is your earth. Okay, balance lines of 2, which is your power. Okay, and balance lines of 3, which is your mind, adaptation, and position of conscious location of its awareness. That's that design. Okay. 3 track provisions, 1 cycle line calculations, triangulation lines, position of point lines of graphs, and set of calculations. Travel mechanism lines, screens, highest interference, Merkaba, tesseract, or tetrahedron, and set calculation setting. Torcal fields, inline rotations, or energetic magnetic high information line screen, and set location. Complicated, eh? But look at the holographic structure of its design, and what it is in traction. What it is in provision, what it is in intelligence, set locations. Okay? Very, very complicated stuff, guys. All right? So, getting a better understanding what's going on, right? Because it's going to help you to more align your ground center locations to your systems, all calculations modified. How this works in provision lines and how you see the I-line center location of your settings. And also locations to your interdimensionals, your galactic, your multi-layers, your divisional layers, your calculation settings, your energetic core, your directions core, your modifications core, your cortex, your placebo, your cerebro. It's line signaling right now. So it's out of the 25 clocking and it's out of its 45-degree angle. Okay, so you guys are no longer structured. You're in configuration. Now you got to really balance that out. All levels of modifications and setting. Okay? So that's it. We're done. So hopefully you get a better understanding of what's going on now with your clockings and your settings and your adaptation cycles, your generation screen locations, your eye receptors, and how you see through provision. All right? Adios. Doo-doo.